Hello, my name is Nathan Garbig, and I am discussing interpersonal deception theory and its role within a contemporary context, especially in the use of Tinder today. So let's get started and let's discuss what IDT or interpersonal deception theory is. From now on, I will be referring to interpersonal deception theory as IDT just because it's a lot shorter for me to say. So according to Burgoon and Bueller, deception is a deliberate act perpetuated by a sender to engender in a receiver beliefs contrary to what the sender believes is true to put the receiver at a disadvantage. Therefore, interpersonal deception theory is the act of communicative messages and the interaction between two parties when deception is present. So there are three major forms of deception: falsification, concealment, and equivocation, and let's quickly run through all three of them just to get a better understanding. So falsification, these are considered by theorists of IDT as the big lies. This type of deception relies on untruthful or fraudulent communicative messages. So I don't know if you've done this, but I definitely have. When I was little, I slapped my brother in the face, and when I was asked if I did it by my parents, I lied straight to their faces and said no. This would be an example of falsification. The second form of deception within IDT is concealment. So think of the makeup product concealer when thinking about this type of deception. It's covering up the truth by not bringing attention to the situation. Sometimes people argue whether withholding information is really telling a lie. Where concealment and withholding information may not be considered a lie, I would definitely consider it deception, and so did the theorists as well. So I have gotten gotten pulled over 4 times, but have never gotten a speeding ticket. So I've never told my parents that information. I've withheld that from them because I thought, since I didn't get them, why would you need to know? That is a form of concealment. And finally, equivocation is the third type of deception. These are considered the white lies, and it's considered the slightest form of deception within IDT. These are ambiguous and unclear messages used to trick a deceiver of a message. So for example, and again I'm going to talk about an actual example in my life, I was running late for a meeting, and so I told the person that I was meeting that I was just coming from a lunch meeting. That lunch meeting, however, was meeting a friend for lunch at Chipotle. A little different, but just switching it up a little bit and being ambiguous, and there I have a white lie. So why is this important? Well, first of all, 1/4 to 1/3 of communicative messages and conversations utilize some sort of deception. So it's important to understand going into all of our communication and any communication form that we utilize, to have that in the back of our minds. Second of all, saving face among communication and among communicators is most deception is actually considered one of the easiest ways to save face. People also use deception to save their reputation, show that their self-worth is great, and it's usually goal oriented, and I'll get to that in a little bit. And then finally, it's really good to know that deceitful messages rise most in close relationships. So whether it be friends, family, siblings, coworkers, other significant others, these close relationships usually tend to have more deception than relationships that are just beginning. So knowing the reasons and tendencies of IDT deception helps us be able to pick up on deceptive tactics when we are being deceived. So speaking of picking up on deceptive tactics, let's talk about how nonverbals play into deception. According to the theorists of IDT, nonverbals are the primary way to detect deception. So detection refers to when a receiver begins to believe that they are being deceived through transmitted sender messages. So when detection sets in, the receiver will usually internalize the deception first. So this means that they'll understand, I believe that this person is lying to me. So once they do that, there are two things that they might do. The first one is approach the situation. So that might mean by calling them out, fighting them if they're hot-headed, or discussing, hey, I think you're lying to me, or telling me untruthful information. What's up? If they are cool about the situation. The second thing that they might do is let it go or let the lie continue and just go into that situation knowing this person tends to lie, so I'll take what they say with a grain of salt. So the second word or definition that I'd like to go over is leakage, and this term refers to the sender's subconscious exposure of deception through nonverbals and verbal mistakes. So this is when a liar is in a web of lies, and all of a sudden, he or she can't manage all the lies, and so it begins to poke through that they're telling a lie, and this might come through their body language, a cracked smile when they're telling a lie, the lack of eye contact when telling a lie, or even stumbling over details when a receiver asks a question. And then finally, suspicion is the third definition that I want to go over, and this is when a deceiver begins to notice that the receiver is noticing the lie, and the sender of the message might try to reroute the deception or adapt his or her behaviors accordingly. So, this is when the deceiver may tell another lie, or avoid the other party, or even avert the suspicion by keeping the receiver preoccupied, in order to just keep their mind off of the whole situation and that the fact that they're telling a lie. So each of these are considered a cycle in deceptive interaction, and each one, detection, leakage, and suspicion, work off of each other. So there are four major assumptions within IDT. Number one, interaction needs to be present for deception to be present. So that means that both parties, the receiver and the communicator, must be communicating, interacting, and when the theory was first established, it was assumed that this interaction was always face to face. Number two, deception is conscious. So both parties are putting forth mental effort into the interaction. And additionally, deception is a conscious effort. So people, when they are deceiving someone, they're not saying, "Oh, I never knew that I was deceiving this person." No, they go into that saying, I have to tell a lie, or I need to tell them a little bit of untrue information. 3. Deception is goal-oriented. So this means most of the time deception is used to save a reputation, increase self-worth, or save face. And that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier, a few slides back. Number 4, deception is rooted in social norms. So we follow expectancy violation theory in our ability to deceive. So let's apply IDT to Tinder. So online dating has in the past been the stereotype of, only desperate and creepy people use online dating. However, now, in recent years, mobile dating apps are regarded as some of the easiest and fastest ways to find a significant other. For example, as of today, there are more than 50 million Tinder users on the globe. And then 79% of all Tinder users are millennials, and 73% of college students consider Tinder to be their favorite dating app. So it's definitely an influential application in modern society. So let's see how Tinder works. First of all, we need to know that it's picture-based. So this means that users pick their 6 best and favorite pictures that show them off. People pick the hottest pictures, I guess you could say, and they'll display them. Users can also use the About section as a way to expand on their interests and personality, but it's secondary to the physical attractiveness of the pictures. It's also important to know that Tinder is based on binaries, so the binary decision of whether you want to continue pursuing this person, and that means swiping right, or let's chat, I'm intrigued, or swiping left, which means no, ew, gross, you're ugly, I'm gonna ignore you, or you're just not my type. So once you swipe right with someone and they swipe right with you, it becomes a match, and matching opens up access to the chat function so that you can get to know the person on a deeper level. So let's talk about deception on Tinder. So first of all, it's important to know that the entire internet has lies all over the place, and so Tinder is no different. In fact, Daily Mail, in an article, found that 72% of men have lied about financial status, wealth, or careers, or their career. It's also been noticed that they've lied about their relationship status, interests, or even their entire identities. And this entire identity lying comes in, or is when catfishing comes into play. But men and women both lie to appear more attractive to the opposite sex or the significant other that they're talking to. So let's critique IDT in the context of this contemporary setting of Tinder. So first of all, face-to-face communicative theory. When when IDT was first established, it was considered a face-to-face communicative interpersonal theory. And so, unfortunately, it's unfair to not categorize digital interpersonal communication into this theory, especially because most interpersonal relationships today utilize social and digital communication within computer-mediated messages on a daily basis. So that's one thing that I would like to add to this theory, that it doesn't only have to be face-to-face communication, but it can be over computer-mediated messages, texting, digital, any of that communication. However, that comes to our second point, where leakage and detection techniques were always identified through nonverbals. Well, when conversing or communicating with computer-mediated messages, nonverbals are not always the way one will identify deception. Instead, deception has to happen through comparing pictures, reading the about section content, and comparing it to the actual messages when you're chatting. And unfortunately, scammers have been able to use Tinder and other dating apps because of this inability to use nonverbals to identify deception. So, if someone's not only able to use nonverbals to identify leakage and detection of deception, it's important that on Tinder, when you're using Tinder or any other form of social media, that the user knows that deception is bound to happen at some point, and they go into that context with that mind and being smart about the situation. So, thank you so much for listening to my critique of IDT in a contemporary context within Tinder. These are all the references that I used, and here's the second page of references. Thank you so much again for listening, and I hope that you were able to gain something, some information about interpersonal deception theory.